Our speaker today is Dr. Dean Shrock, and he asks these questions. Did you know that your imagination creates your reality and that whatever you imagine with feeling will be reflected in your life and the world around you? But imagination seeks from us something much deeper, the recognition of its oneness with God. We can call on spiritual assistance for help with anything, but why not ourselves in whom God dwells? Dr. Shrock has long been interested in the power of the mind. It intrigued him so much it became his doctoral dissertation. And in that search, he discovered 10 scientific hypotheses to explain the effectiveness of guided imagery. He also has more than 40 years of personal and professional experience demonstrating its success in mind-body medicine. More recently, Dean's interest has been piqued by rediscovering the life and teaching of Neville Goddard and Masters of the Far East. Dean's very excited to share with you what he's learned and how you can apply this in your life. Please welcome Dr. Dean Shrock.
Excuse me, thank you. As you know, today's theme is imagination, and the daily word was highly appropriate. I thought it was very relevant. Nice choice. I appreciate also Deanna, who's more aware of my background with guided imagery and the invitation to speak today, although I always enjoy coming. I want to start off by giving you my background and why my excitement about speaking with you today and what can be a tremendous tool you can use to help yourself in any arena of your life. So it started off back in 1977. So I really have been looking into this for a while when I attended a self-improvement program and first learned about self-hypnosis or guided imagery. The idea that you could use your thoughts and or your imagination to literally make any change in your life, honestly. And I have to admit that initially I thought it was too good to be true. I used to call this Walt Disney. All you have to do is wish upon a star and your dream comes true. It was very offensive to me. But what happened as I began to apply, and that's what I'm asking you to give this a chance. And for example, I used to have hay fever allergies that I suffered with probably for 15 years at that time. And for any of you who have something like that, you know how irritable it can be. So by imagining myself well and my respiratory system well and my sensitivity to pollens or whatever to be normal, for the next 10 years, I had no hay fever symptoms. Now, partly with a sense of humor, and it's in a whole other lecture, until I got engaged to be married. And my symptoms came back. I know. So what really got my attention, though, although that was big, and I think makes a more impactful statement, is to tell you that when I was in college, I tore up my right knee playing soccer. The only good news about that was it kept me out of Vietnam. The orthopedic surgeon told me you will need surgery within 10 years. And it turned out to be 12. My knee was really starting to hurt. I was becoming immobile. And this doctor who taught me about guided imagery and self-hypnosis a while back said, why don't you imagine your knee well so you don't need the surgery? And I cannot tell you how many times I rolled my eyes at this guy when he would say something that seemed so preposterous. But he had a way of challenging me and say, you know what, try for a week, see what happens. So I did. And in 2 days, I had no pain. By the end of that week, I had full use of my knee. I have never had surgery, and I've even busted the other knee up since and learned to downhill ski. I also used it to put on weight. Actually, I chose to, I was told to, because I was very slight. As small as I am now, I was considerably smaller. But I had owned clothing stores, and I admitted to my vanity, and I liked how people looked and dressed and so forth. So what I did was I took an image of and this may sound odd to you at first, but I thought, why not go for it? So I had this image of David. And I imagined in my mind that my body was going to look like David so that I could put on weight, in fact, 15 to 20 pounds, and not change the size of my waistline. And I did it. It took me a month, believe it or not, to start to put on weight. I used to be able to just metabolize and not put on the weight, but in the end, again, I put on that weight and I did not change the size of my waistline. So I hope you appreciate why I became interested, even though honestly, still at that point, I knew there had to be some other explanation. Your mind could not just do that. And then I've shared with you before, this doctor who taught me about guided imagery and all was psychic, lived in psychic all of his life. And we ended up becoming business partners and best friends and even roommates for many years. And we would meditate daily. And before too long, my friend actually began to go into a trance-like state and channel. And so thereafter, for every day for 7 years, I had the unique opportunity to ask a zillion questions and learn a great deal more about, let's just say, truth, which actually was a very stressful time for me because now they were encouraging me to go back to school to get advanced degrees, as they said, would open doors that otherwise wouldn't be open to me. So I could talk about something like this and indeed to learn a great deal about it. So when I went through my doctoral program, again, fortunately, they allowed me to study guided imagery. And one of the things I learned was certainly the idea that you could use your imagination to relax. And I learned probably the most practiced and probably best supported scientifically approach was called progressive relaxation. And chances are some of you have heard of it and even practiced, where you would imagine going through your body very systematically, the different muscle groups, imagining them relaxed. And Dr. Herbert Benson, in particular at Harvard, did a great deal to establish the science of this and how it could bring about what he called the relaxation response, which is a very healthy response in the body as you became relaxed. And then I remember Edmund Jacobson, who probably really got the ball rolling going back to the 20s when he really began this and brought it from Europe. And one of the little pieces of research he did, which really got my attention though, was you could measure the neuromuscular response of anything. Just if I want to pick up this cup, it would literally show the neuromuscular activity it took to do that. So what he had people do is firstly lift the cup and then got this printout of what it took to do that. And then he had the same people only imagine they were lifting the cup. They didn't even move their arm and got almost the identical same printout in terms of a neuromuscular response. So when you really did it or when you imagined it. So again, to appreciate for me now, because I was really wanting to know the truth of this and very scientifically oriented at the time, how or why that got my attention so well. Then a unique thing happened is I had to do 2 years of internship after getting my degree before I could sit for the licensing exam. So to my great surprise, but I was thrilled to have this opportunity, I actually wrote a proposal for research for the Cleveland Clinic to test the use of guided imagery with breast cancer. And then the next year, I worked at a rehab hospital with people primarily recovering from strokes, and had a very good experience also of showing people how they could rehab and make a much faster, better recovery from the strokes and those symptoms, as well as chronic pain, which was really a tough one. But what I found, and this is going to sound too good to be true, but a lot of what I could really or would like to share with you, honest to goodness, there's no way it can't sound too good to be true, except it is. So in this case, I'm going to tell you 2 things that are coming to mind right away. One is, if you've ever had to deal with chronic pain or pain, and they're going to measure it within a hospital setting or scientific setting, you know how they have what they call a 0 to 10 scale, very subjective. You know what's really fascinating? There's no objective measurement of pain. There's none. So that's why they use that very subjective one. So then you say if you have a little pain, you know, one maybe or two, and if you have so much pain you couldn't be here, you know, that would be a 10. And numbers of times people gave me a 10. Now I know that that couldn't be true, but it tells me how much pain they're feeling. Could you imagine experiencing something you called a 10 and in 1/2 hour session calling it a 0? I know. Now, I'm dealing with the subjectivity of this patient, but how do I deny their experience and what they're telling me? Or another one that was really an eye catcher, again, for me, was in that rehab hospital. There was a gym-like area where people would come in and often say be fitted for a prosthesis, often related diabetes and poor circulation. And so they ended up losing a leg very commonly below the knee. So now again, they're in with their prosthesis and learning to walk again. And so what I enjoyed the opportunity was, and by the way, most people wouldn't even allow me to try this with them, is to show them within 1/2 hour again, how I could improve the circulation and their blood flow so well, increasing the probability they would never have to think about losing the other leg, right? Would you be interested? Not only did I show that you could do that, and we just put what we called a handheld thermometer between the toes of the leg that was good, and show that by imagining yourself very relaxed and now you increase blood circulation, you're going to make the temperature raise. So I could show them right away that we can increase the blood flow temperature at least 4 degrees, at least in 1/2 hour. Would you be interested again if you had such a concern? What was fascinating to me is most people never came back to let me help them further. Now, my point in telling you this, though, is to be honest with you and tell you that there is, in my experience, a natural resistance to this idea of mind and body, and it can have that kind of influence. Remember, I lived this. I didn't think this could work either. But that's why I'm sharing this with you. I want you to know before I build up into the spiritual aspect of this, and certainly what I learned in looking at Neville Goddard's work and some of the masters in the Far East, again, what can happen? So I had another very unique opportunity while I was working in that rehab hospital, and that is a Dr. Carl Simonton was accepting internships to work with him at his Simonton Cancer Center. And I applied, unfortunately was accepted. And Dr. Simonton, if you don't recognize the name, was the one physician who really popularized the use of using your imagination, imagining your immune system like Pac-Man, going around and gobbling up cancer cells. So what a unique experience then to work with this man who had really become very interested and well known for his use of guided imagery with cancer patients, and then go on immediately after leaving the rehab hospital to become director of mind-body medicine for a group of cancer centers where I was being asked to integrate and teach a model like Dr. Simonton's to their cancer patients. So I just was given so many wonderful opportunities to really learn and practice and see what could really happen. And I remember one time we were based at where Penn State is. We were not part of the university, but in State College, Pennsylvania. So anyhow, I often had Penn State faculty in my classes. So this one time I had a woman diagnosed with breast cancer who was actually a postdoctorate student at the university in cell biology. So when I taught about guided imagery and how you could imagine your immune system, you know, going after and gobbling up cancer cells, when she did the exercise and then we came back to class and I asked people, you know, what was your image? I was curious what people did because you didn't have to imagine real cancer cells or real immune cells. You could use your imagination. So I thought, well, this gal really knows what this stuff looks like. So I was curious again what she did. And on her own, Pac-Man. She said that's exactly what your immune system does when it's working properly. Like that pi thing going around after all the dots. So when your immune system's working properly, you will absolutely gobble up those cancer cells in pretty short order. And so another thing, that I'm going to just as an aside, but it's coming to my mind, and it's very bothersome because I was just speaking recently with someone whose husband is a physician, and she's been dealing with cancer for years. And it's that cancer cells are weak cells biologically. Did you know that? Cancer cells are weak cells biologically. Imagine I have, and here use your imagination. Imagine I have a test tube, and I'm going to put a cancer cell in this test tube. And I have another test tube, and I'm going to put a healthy immune cell in this test tube. And now I put them together. What's going to happen? No trick question. I'm sorry. Yeah, because see, you guys are, on to me, because that will never happen, has never happened. And that's what Dr. Simonton taught me early on. And so when I worked in these cancer centers, why in the hell have these people not been told that before they ever got to me? Don't you think you would look at your cancer and your ability to heal a little differently if you knew there were things you could do? And sense in the very definitely in the end, it's really about building your immune system. Does that make sense? That's what you want to do. And so I relied on teaching that way around, let's do anything we can do to build our immune system. And indeed, we now know, of course, that your immune system can be directly affected by your imagination or guided imagery. So I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but I just really want to make sure you understand just how extreme this can be. And so I've unfortunately had the opportunities to work with people who really were diagnosed with late stage disease and terminal. I never really wanted to know that information necessarily ahead of time. I didn't want to be biased going into work with you, knowing you were stage 4 and you only had so many months to live or whatever. But on numbers of occasions, I worked with people who were that late stage and were absolutely medically, the prognosis was they would be dead within 6 months. Some of them so bad in their prognosis that they shouldn't even be alive when I'm talking to them. And absolutely turn it around with no evidence of cancer. Now, there's more to it. You know me, doctor's orders, go fishing, is that your lifestyle makes a big difference. And in my opinion, nothing is more important than your being able to have fun. And that may sound pretty lame when you're talking about chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, the importance of being able to have fun or joy. And so the huge message there was people really, really needed as part of their treatment to reprioritize their lives. But you could help yourself with your imagination there as well. So earlier this year, for many years, I taught this 6-week series of classes, which Penn State University ended up researching and found it actually improved survival with cancer. So then we really had, good reason to be promoting these classes, teaching these classes. And then ever since, actually, I've been teaching classes regularly, but once the pandemic came, so, for about a 4-year period, I wasn't able to teach. It just wasn't practical, to say the least. But earlier this year, I taught my 6-week series again, and I enjoyed doing it so much. I thought, Deanna, it was so nice, and Barbara, to have and Charlene's in my class, and I just feel like, okay, I've got to teach again. So actually, I'm teaching somewhere every month for the rest of the year, and I'm very pleased to be doing it again. So, but in that process, of course, I started to reread a lot of things and really look into my old notes and some of my experiences. And that's when I ran across a book series. I don't have that book with me this morning, but I'm sure I told you about it last time I spoke here. And that was Baird Spalding's series of books, The Life and Teaching of the Masters of the Far East. And then Charlene gifted me a book recently, and of course I didn't bring that one today either, about Swami Rama and living with the Himalayan masters. And you want to talk about reading something that is too good to be true and is just nuts, except it isn't, is you read those books. And when these research parties or Swami Rama reporting from his own experience, what he observed and lived and went through, there was absolutely nothing beyond your power, their power. Now, I'm not going to kid you, it takes a serious discipline. So if you think that you can have a virgin birth, forgive me for, because it's part of a sense of humor, except this gets into a whole other thing about Neville Goddard. I didn't realize Neville Goddard was actually a mystic and clairvoyant, so that he was shown and told how to reinterpret the Bible. And it was all metaphor. Nothing was literal. So now if you can think of a virgin metaphorically, do you see how this is a whole different ballgame? Anyhow, Neville was remarkable in his ability to bring a very mystical part to the understanding of imagination, which again, you nailed perfectly in your reading. But understand, going through university and working in cancer centers, I'm not at all comfortable. In fact, they'd probably booted me out if I started talking about a spiritual, mystical aspect to what I wanted them to do. Can you understand that? Okay, so that's what's fun for me to be able to come here, because I've told you probably every time I've spoken here, you're like preaching to the choir, but it's fun because I really can speak openly about what I really believe. And then it's up to you. And I want to say that very definitely today, because it came up in the last 3 days, at least 3 times, the importance of non-attachment. So I'm telling you straight out, I want you to be attached in a way to this outcome. I want you to see it and I want you to feel it. I want you to be it. But on the other hand, and I'll give you some reasons for this in a moment, it's very important that you focus on the end result in particular and not how it happens or when it happens, if that makes sense. Because, well, one, we all have a soul script. If you've read my book, Why Love Heals, and I had another unique opportunity in talking through my great psychic friend Sharon Bauer when she channeled John the Baptist. So John was explaining a lot of stuff. Again, we all have a soul script. And so before you ever come into your human body, you have a real good idea of what you came in to do. You chose to come in to have those experiences. Now, let's say you came in to learn about forgiveness. What is the probability you're going to have some pretty funky experiences along the way to teach you? What if you came to learn about patience? It reminds me, A Child of Eternity. There's a book titled Child of Eternity, where a woman had an autistic child and very low functioning. So, I mean this while just talking to you like this way, but could you imagine if you had a child, would you choose it to be autistic? Okay, but what happened at some point is the young girl learned through essentially like a typewriter or a keyboard to communicate with her mother. Imagine how cool that would have been to the mother. Now she can finally at least communicate with her daughter. Well, before very long, this daughter is saying stuff way beyond her mother, a wisdom that was like, where in the world did that come from? Along with what she said was that her mother and she chose for her to come in to be autistic and explained how they did it and why. And part of it, what triggered this for me, is for her mother to learn patience. Now, I mean that well, but this is a true story. This is serious. My point still is coming back to no attachment to the end result. And that is, what if it doesn't happen? And so that's why I want to talk to you both as a scientist and very practically speaking, the placebo effect. Your beliefs and your expectations are as powerful as any medical treatment. Your beliefs and your expectations are as powerful as any medical treatment. That's why we have control groups. You must control for that effect, or the research is really honestly invalid. The placebo effect works anywhere from 10 to 100% of the time. Usually we talk about a third of the time. And so when I would teach in my classes, how would you like to improve your odds? How would you like to learn about something as firmly scientifically based as anything can tell you that will increase your odds of getting better by 30%? Interested? Well, that's the science of this. Your beliefs alone, without the additional spiritual aspect of aligning with the core eternal truth of who you really are, and then imagining whatever it is you desire. And most importantly, living it, seeing it, being it, truly acting as if. No doubts, no worries, no fears. Let go of the past completely. Again, I know this is asking a lot, but what if you knew it had to work at least a third of the time? Is it worth a shot? So I'm trying to be pretty practical about this, but to make a strong point. So the idea is that, according to Neville Goddard, that essentially God is consciousness. In fact, I made a note to read from my book, Why Love Heals, on something I know I've read to you before, but I think it's important, and some of you are new here. I noticed that, by the way, in your library, you have Conversations with God, Book 1 in your library. It's my very favorite book ever. So if you've not read that, it's actually available in your own library to read. Okay. So this is in response to Neil Donald Walsh, the author, talking with God. And so this is God speaking. My purpose in creating you, my spiritual offspring, was for me to know myself as God. I have no way to do that save through you. Thus it can be said, and has been said many times, that my purpose for you is that you should know yourself as me. And like in the reading, we are in fact divine co-creators. The promise of God is that you are his son, her offspring, its likeness, his equal. Here's where you get hung up. You can accept his son, offspring, likeness, but you recoil at being called his equal. It is too much to accept, too much bigness, too much wonderment, too much responsibility. For if you are God's equal, that means that nothing is being done to you and all things are created by you. And while we're sitting here, this phrase came to me, the thought about, think of this for a moment. All criticism is self-criticism. What does that mean to you? All criticism is self-criticism because it's all a reflection of you. The world is a reflection of you. You have the power to change the world, collectively, certainly. And that's what's so lovely about groups like this, that you come here with a real purpose and a big heart and a giving heart and are really opening to using your understanding to improve our world. I tell you this, all you see in your world is the outcome of your idea about it. Do you want to change your life to truly take off? Then change your idea about it, about you. Think, speak, and act as the God you are. So, you know within Unity in particular, in my experience, that is really part of what Unity believes. I'm asking you to believe it like you've never believed it before, along with the idea, what they call it, the power of prayer. For example, there's a statement attributed to Jesus in the Bible where he said, pray, believing you've already received. It's a perfect description of guided imagery. So we've been taught this for a long, long time. It took us a while in science to catch up and understand and be able to use this. And again, so I'm pleased to have this opportunity to explain to you such a practical and helpful approach. Chances are you've all heard about Elizabeth and Jerry Hicks. I don't know of anybody more popular or well-known than Esther Hicks as a psychic medium. And if you've ever heard about the law of attraction, or remember back when book and movie came out about called The Secret. That was almost entirely based on information coming from Mr. Hicks. Anyhow, so they couldn't be more clear about the idea of being able to attract or create whatever it is that you really do want in your life. Then I'm going to just hold this up. This is my new best book, Charlene. So Neil Goddard, I don't know if he's written 10 or 12 books already, and lots of lectures, which, by the way, when Charlene was speaking earlier and Barbara about Charlene donated audio tapes. So Charlene had lots of recordings of Neil Goddard's lectures, which she has given to Unity to be able to use. But what surprised us both was last year, they put all of Neville Goddard's stuff in one book, all of his books and all of his writings and lectures. So if any of you are interested, it's not that expensive. But you will not get over how much and how often it is said, it is all about recognizing the really true core of who you are. And when you align with that, the world is your oyster. And that's what came from looking at Baird Spalding's research with the masters in the Far East, or Swami Ramas. Swami Ramas, say that 10 times. With the masters in the Himalayas. And then, of course, then Neville. So I really encourage you to give this a real chance. And quickly, I may have really said what I needed to say already. Just going to quickly look through here. Yeah, I even made a note. If you're at all interested in the Olympics, watching the Olympics, and my wife is so excited to see Simone Biles and see her perform gymnastics. How many of you would be surprised to know Simone Biles practices visualization as part of her training? It's true. So anyhow, I appreciate this opportunity again very much. Now for our meditation, what I would like to do is we're going to practice this. You can think of it like prayer, only pray, believing you've already received. Forgive me for this way of saying it. We're not nagging God to do something, like God's not listening, and maybe what do I have to do to God do this? As Neville said, and I would tell you certainly, it's you. It's you. You have the power within you. God is in everything. Wherever we understand what God is, which I would do gladly if you want. When I wrote Why Love Heals, and then I was introduced to John the Baptist, and he said that I could ask questions. I said, great, tell me why love heals, right off the bat. So that was fun to have him respond there. But in the end, because throughout he used terms like God, and I'm still very steeped in science, and I'm going, so I asked John if he would actually define God. And so if you want, I can read that to you. It's only 2 paragraphs. Or you want me to do that? Okay. So again, this is not my words. These are John's, but I certainly stand behind them. God is divine source. God is not religion. Religion is of man. Divine source could be best described as the love that comes from and affects everybody like the rays of sunshine. There is no one that the sun does not touch or have an effect upon. God is true energy. Energy does not have a beginning or an end, such as a vibration. It is eternal. It doesn't matter what man wants to believe or read or practice as his own rituals, or how he connects with the God source or divine source. That energy is truly within himself. He is God's source. I can only validate and confirm what you have put in your book, that God is truly energy. This energy has a consciousness. It has a connection and a compassion and a love to it. This energy is not the type of energy that is used on this physical plane to create heat or move something. It has a consciousness to it that connects to our individual consciousness. It is in its own sense telepathic, where we can have a conversation and study our intentions. We have an immediate connection to this consciousness because we are never disconnected from this source of consciousness. I then asked John, so we could think of God as consciousness or awareness. Absolutely. I asked again, so another way to refer to God would be divine consciousness. Absolutely. In fact, we really like what you've just said with the term divine consciousness. So we can use different words or terms to understand our source. And that's the term that Esther and Jerry Hicks, like in Abraham, coming through is referring to God as source. So I was very concerned in people reading this book that I could offend somebody by having people think about God in a more traditional sense or in a more new age kinds of sense, whatever. So I appreciated that John was willing to answer this for me, and I hope then it has some meaning or is helpful for you as well. So again, now I'd like to lead into our meditation, which is going to be the practice of using visualization, our consciousness, to actually create whatever it is we want. So I'm firstly going to get us into a relaxed state, which will help us make that connection, and then be thinking about something you really want. I mean, it can be anything. It has to do with relationships, money, health, having fun. What would you really like to do? What is a desire you would really love to have come true? No holds barred. No worries, no doubts, no fears. If you could, what would you love to have in your life? And we'll lead into, I want you to really go there. I want you to be there, to really experience, especially feel what it would be like to now have that in your life. Here we go. So please, if you will close your eyes as a way of helping you focus. And then to start by helping us narrow our attention, to focus our attention. I want you simply to pay attention to your breathing. Simply be aware that you're breathing in and out. You may be aware of movement in your abdomen or shoulders as your chest. As you simply breathe in and out. And now I want you to imagine a color. Don't think of a color. Just let a color come into your awareness that you associate with relaxation. And then once you become aware of that color, I want you to imagine as you breathe in, you're breathing in that color and really that energy of relaxation, which now gently begins to fill your head. If a color has not become apparent to you, just imagine a color that you think is relaxing and see it and feel it begin to spread throughout your brain, through all of your physical senses, and then gently begin to move down your spine. See and feel this beautiful, restorative, relaxing energy now spread across your shoulders and down your arms to your hands and fingers. And some of you will likely begin to feel your arms becoming heavier or lighter as you become more and more relaxed. Then imagine this beautiful, relaxing energy moving farther down your spine and spreading throughout your chest and abdomen and back. See and feel this loving, relaxing energy fill your heart. And then imagine this beautiful, relaxing energy going down through the tip of your spine and spreading throughout your hips, and then down your legs all the way to your feet and toes. And now that you're feeling more and more relaxed, it becomes easier to sense and feel a connection with our source, with our soul. So now I simply want you to allow a connection, a sense, a feeling of connection with your soul, with this core eternal truth of who you are. Take your time. And then I want you to acknowledge this core truth, your Godness, the part of you that indeed knows of your eternal connection with all that is. You are divine consciousness with the power to create anything. So now, with the greatest excitement and enjoyment, I want you to now clearly state within yourself a desire, something you really want in your life. And as I've attempted to explain to you just how effective this can be, the keys are that you allow it to happen, that you feel fully having accomplished whatever it is you want, and know that you can. No fears, no worries, no doubts. No looking back and say, I've never been able to do that before. How could this possibly be true? I'm asking you to give it a chance, to accept the truth of who you are and your power, and all of my experience of being able to accomplish the impossible. So now I'm going to let you take your time, see and feel that you have whatever it is you want. Allow yourself to truly feel how good that would be. Thank you. I know that I would prefer to give you more time, but I hope you will practice this on your own. So however you think about, you might say your prayers, anything else you might do. Remember, this is a tool. There are lots of things you can do to be happier and healthier, whether it's something like nutrition or exercise, having fun, to be sure. But your imagination really is more powerful than you can really possibly understand. in my experience. So we'll finish the service today, and then when we go for our break, we will have a discussion for any of you, if you have questions about anything I've said. And then Charlene, who has actually much more experience and knowledge about Neville Goddard, will be sitting in with us, and we'd be glad to share any of her experience or knowledge as well. Thank you very much.